Isolation, a word often associated with loneliness and detachment, can take a different meaning in certain contexts. In some places, isolation can be a catalyst for grandeur, personal growth, and even beauty. It may even be considered necessary in certain circumstances. Great Basin is probably the most remote park in the lower 48. It's 200 miles north of Vegas and 180 miles southwest of Salt Lake, with very little in between. And that's one of the things that makes it special. The majority of the way here from civilization is lonely two-lane roads. There's no airport nearby, so you will be driving here. There's no getting around that. And it's well over 100 miles from the nearest interstate, I-15. But certainly don't let its remoteness deter you. Great Basin is a great park with much to offer. The Great Basin itself is a vast endorheic drainage basin, meaning that none of its rivers or streams drain into the ocean. Most of the water, whether from rain, snow, or from underground springs, simply dries up or flows into seasonal lakes called sinks. Geographically, it encompasses most of Nevada and large parts of western Utah, with the Mojave Desert region of California, as well as parts of Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, and even Baja California to the far south. While there are several other endorheic basins in the world, the Great Basin is the largest in North America. Located in White Pine County, Great Basin National Park lies within the Great Basin Desert, which is classified as a cold desert. The park's boundaries encompass 2/3 of the Snake Range, a small mountain range that contains several large mountains, with Wheeler Peak, the second tallest mountain in Nevada, towering above the region. Your first stop before entering the park will likely be the Baker Visitor Center, located in Baker off of Highway 487. It's one of 2 visitor centers serving the park. Here you can get the information you need, as well as view interpretive exhibits on what awaits you in Great Basin National Park, such as its wildlife, geology, history, etc. Great Basin does not have an entrance station, so for the most part it's free to enter, though if you do plan to camp overnight, there is a fee of course. If you follow Lehman Caves Road all the way to the end, you'll reach the Lehman Caves Visitor Center, Great Basin's other visitor center. As its name suggests, this is where the famous Lehman Caves is located. There's also a shop and a small restaurant there too. Taking a turn just before Lehman Caves will put you on the Wheeler Peak Scenic Drive leading up to the Wheeler Peak Campground, where the Alpine Lakes Loop and Bristlecone Groves are located. Be prepared, as the road is 12 miles long and has inclines and winding turns everywhere, but you will soon see why it's a scenic drive. There are several campgrounds and trailheads on the way up, as well as stunning overlooks. But keep in mind that Wheeler Peak Scenic Drive is closed in the winter months.
I'm gonna shoot this in 60 frames a second so you can get a better detail, but all of this lake bed, or this is the Great Basin right here. And up until the last ice age, until the end of the last ice age, this was all part of Lake Bonneville. And the old lake actually used to come right up to the rim of Great Basin. And that over there is part of Humboldt National Forest. I wonder why that mountain range over there isn't part of Great Basin as well, because it's pretty similar to these mountains here. But yeah, this is the Great Basin. That's Utah over there, and this is Nevada. And all of this was a massive lake. If we were standing here 20,000 years ago, I mean, it would look like an ocean. It would look like a sea.
Anyway, as you gain altitude on the Scenic Drive, or anywhere else in the park for that matter, pay closer attention to the environment around you and you'll notice a change in scenery and habitat. This change of subclimate with elevation is called altitudinal zonation, and the zones are referred to as life zones. From the Baker Visitor Center at roughly 5,000 feet above sea level to the summit of Wheeler Peak at around 13,065 feet above sea level, there are at least 5 life zones, each with unique flora and fauna, including differing average temperatures and oxygen levels. The easiest way to tell the biomes apart is by the plants and trees. The first zone is the cold desert shrub zone, which is everything until around 6,000 feet. This zone is characterized by its desert landscapes, with shrubs everywhere. From roughly 6,000 to 7,000 feet is the sagebrush zone, known for its slightly cooler temperatures and plentiful sagebrushes. Some patches of grassland can also be found here. Continuing up from 7,000 to 8,000 feet is the pinyon juniper zone, where juniper trees start to appear. Conifer forests may also start to begin around this elevation. From 8,000 to 11,000 feet is the montane zone, also known as the subalpine zone. This biome is colder, with higher precipitation levels, and is mostly forested with coniferous trees, including the famous bristlecone. Everything higher than 11,000 feet is the alpine zone, the highest and coldest in the park, with thinner air and the harshest conditions for life. Most areas of the alpine zone in the park are rocky, and parts of it can be covered by snow and ice year-round. Of course, all these zones host unique ecosystems and wildlife. While they are separate, there is some overlap, and all are connected in some way. Once you reach the end of Wheeler Peak Scenic Drive, you'll arrive at the Wheeler Peak Campground and parking lot for the Bristlecone and Alpine Lakes trailheads. The Alpine Lakes Trail is a modest and quite easy 2.7-mile loop in a glacial cirque of Wheeler Peak. On this trail, you'll see 2 glacial lakes, Theresa and Stella, then a small grassy area where you're likely to encounter deer or other small mammals. The first lake you will encounter if you follow the trail clockwise is Theresa Lake. These lakes are technically not lakes, but glacial tarns. Tarns are generally found in alpine mountain environments and form when glaciers create a hollow or dip in a mountainside. Once the glaciers melt away, the bowl or depression left behind can fill with water and become a lake, pond, or pool. Translated from Old Norse, the word tarn roughly means mountain lake without tributaries, and there are 7 of them in Great Basin National Park. They are Theresa, Stella, Brown, which is off trail, Baker, Treasure, Dead, and Johnson. The water level of these lakes will vary depending on the time of year. During summer and fall, they could resemble a puddle, if not dry up completely. This is particularly true of Dead and Treasure lakes. In winter and early spring, they are usually covered in ice. While in mid to late spring, they can fill up and overflow due to snowmelt or rainstorms.
So this is Stella Lake. This is glacial tarn number 2, and it is the largest of the glacial tarn lakes in Great Basin National Park. It's pretty big.
All of the lakes, while similar, have slight differences. For example, Stella and Theresa, the two most visited, as well as Baker and Johnson, are located in glacial cirques, while Brown Lake is in a glacial moraine and Dead Lake is in a terminal glacial moraine. But more on that later. Branching off from the Alpine Lake Trail is another trail that will take you to Great Basin's most accessible grove of intermountain bristlecone pines. These trees are an icon of the park and can only be found in the high elevations of Nevada, eastern California, and western Utah. Bristlecones can live the longest of all tree species and are the oldest non-clonal organisms on Earth. They can easily be identified by their twisty nature and can range from 10 to 25 feet in height. The twistiness and tilting of the trunks is due to eons of exposure to high wind and erosion, which over time changes the shape and composition of the tree. The dead bristlecones that are scattered throughout the landscape are also extremely old. Some of the reasons why bristlecones live so long is due to their environment and the fact that they grow very slowly. Their high elevation and the cold, dry, semi-alpine climate make them relatively safe from threats such as bugs, fungus, rot, and forest fires. Bristlecones at lower elevations tend to be straight and don't have the twisty, windy shape to them like the ones up here do.
Nearly all of these bristlecones are over 1,000 years old.
In fact, the official name of the tree is Pinus longeva, meaning longevity.
These trees take an average or so of a century to put on an inch of girth. Okay, so the next thing you do is you look at the trunk of the tree at its base, and if you can see 30 inches of radius there, you're seeing 3,000 years of growth. And the last one is, and one of the scientists actually calculated this a couple of decades, 3 decades ago, I'm sorry, I'm dating myself. Anyway, and he was able to calculate by actually doing corings into the roots of trees and looking at the rings there, that the soil on these mountainsides erodes at an average rate, that's a key number of course, or a key word in there, an average rate of a foot per 1,000 years. Okay, so you look at that tree and you see all the roots that are exposed under that tree, and there's one root just off to about the center. It starts in the center and goes off to the left side a little bit, and it goes up in like a series of stair steps. Kind of looks like bigger.
Somewhere in this bristlecone forest is the stump of a legend. Officially known as White Pine County 144, but better known by its mythical nickname, Prometheus. A Great Basin bristlecone scientists believe was anywhere from 4,800 to at least 5,000 years old. Prometheus was discovered and designated by researcher Donald S. Curry sometime between 1958 and 1962. He became fascinated by the tree, conducted research on it, and took several core samples seeking to find its exact age. What happened next is only speculation, but apparently, frustrated by his lack of progress, Curry sought permission to cut the tree down for further analysis. And unfortunately, in August 1964, permission was granted. Unknowingly, he might have just killed the oldest living tree on Earth. There has been some debate as to how old Prometheus actually was. Curry believed it might have been around 4800. However, modern research shows that it's possible that the tree could have been 4,880 years old. If this is correct, that means Prometheus germinated around 2880 BC and is as old as the first dynasty of Egypt. Samples show it had 4,862 growth rings, but due to the unforgiving climate of Wheeler Peak, a growth ring likely did not replicate every single year, putting Prometheus at an estimated 4,900 years old. But truthfully, we'll likely never have an exact age. Prometheus' stump is off-trail and not easily accessible. However, a section of trunk is on display at the Visitor Center in Baker, where you can read a more detailed story about this mythical monolith. Continuing past the Bristlecone Grove, the ground and terrain around you will get tougher because of the jagged rocks, so it's highly recommended to have good footwear. During the last ice age, more than 10,000 years ago, global average temperatures were about 10 degrees cooler than they are today, and glaciers once came down to about 9,000 feet. During that time, the Wheeler Peak Glacier was probably way larger than it is today, and likely filled the entire slot canyon between Wheeler and Doso Doyabe peaks. The glacier itself is tucked away in the talus between both peaks, situated in the corner, and it's almost completely covered by rocks, so it is a little hard to see. Theoretically, you can venture up to the glacier itself, however falling rocks and outright rock slides make it dangerous, so I wouldn't go past this pole. Wheeler Peak Glacier is the last glacier in Great Basin National Park and is currently retreating, and it's expected to completely disappear within 20 years. So if I were you, I'd probably see it now. Once night falls, the sky above you will come alive. Due to its remoteness and little to no light pollution, Great Basin is ranked one of the best stargazing national parks in the country. So much so, in 2016, the Universities of Nevada, Reno, and Southern Utah partnered with the NPS to operate a state-of-the-art observatory to view the cosmos, primarily in search of exoplanets in distant star systems. The Great Basin Observatory is off-limits to the public. However, there are times when it is open, such as the annual Great Basin Astronomy Festival, held annually in September. The NPS offers free interpretive astronomy programs several nights a week, where visitors can learn about the stars and view distant objects through powerful telescopes.
Which is one of the brightest stars in the night sky. Pretty much the brightest star. It's that star right up there.
Things that can be seen are our closest neighbors such as the Moon, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, etc., and even galaxies like the Andromeda or Pinwheel galaxies. During the summer months, the galactic center, Sagittarius A, can be seen in the south just above the mountains. Independent stargazing is encouraged, and one can of course bring their own telescope to view the night sky. I've been to quite a bit of parks with dark skies, and I have to say that Great Basin is by far one of the best. I took this picture of the Milky Way with only my phone. A great hike in the park is the trek up to Baker Lake. The Baker Lake trailhead begins at the end of Baker Creek Road, not far from the Lehman Caves Visitor Center. It is also one of several access points to Great Basin's larger trail network. One thing to note about hiking in Great Basin is nearly all the trails snake up and down mountains, so starting out early in the day is always recommended. Camping up here is allowed, permit required. But if you plan to day hike, make sure you bring plenty of consumables. It's also recommended that you're in decent physical shape, as these uphill trails can get exhausting. Also, bring plenty of water with you.
31 years ago. So this is Baker Creek. Look at how clear that water is. Beautiful. It's super cold. You just want to drink it, but don't drink it, but continuing up.
The trail parallels Baker Creek until about halfway up.
How much further? Bear Lake. Almost there. There it is.
After about 6 miles with an elevation gain of roughly 2,600 feet, you'll finally reach Baker Lake, the second largest tarn in Great Basin National Park. Located in a narrow glacial cirque, the area is rocky and also visually stunning. Bristlecones can be found in and around the area. In 2020, Baker Lake was the subject of a biological restoration project that repopulated it with the native Bonneville cutthroat trout. Often called bonnies, they're a unique species of trout only found within the Great Basin. While the Bonneville trout can be found in most streams in the park, they disappeared from Baker and Johnson lakes due to the introduction of the brook trout by the Forest Service many decades ago. Bonnies are an ancient species, as they existed during the Pleistocene and lived in the prehistoric Lake Bonneville. After the lake vanished completely roughly 6,000 years ago, they've been scattered throughout the region, primarily living in various streams and small lakes. The brooks have since been removed, and the project appears to be a success, and Baker Lake has since reverted to its natural state. However, fishing at the lake is strictly prohibited, as the restoration project is still ongoing. Because bonnies are a recovering species, it's strongly recommended to release if you catch one. While it's hard to see amongst all the rocks, the trail heads south and goes up over the mountain to Johnson Lake on the other side. Be sure to have a detailed map of the trail network before continuing on past Baker Lake.
One of the really cool things about Ely that I like is everyone here is like super friendly. You know, they treat you like your family almost. Out here it's like, I don't know, it's just a very friendly vibe that you get here, and like all the employees that work at these hotels and gas stations, super nice. So if you
Boys, have you seen Kyle? He's not at home.
Kyle went down to play in the basketball game, Mrs. Garrison.
He's going to play basketball? Oh my god. What? Well, I only made him look like he could play basketball. If he actually does it, the testicles in his knees will explode.
What? But you made him into a basketball player.
No, I just made him look more like one. We have to stop him from playing. Those testicles in his knees are ticking time bombs. Oh, Jesus.
This is a classic episode. Oh, hello. What are you doing? Rattlesnake. It's a little rattlesnake. These petroglyphs were made by the Fremont Indians about 1,000 years ago. And there's some remnants of some over here. Unfortunately, they've kind of been eroded away. I'm kind of paranoid about that rattlesnake now, but if you look closely, like right here, you can still see some. Even though jerks over the years have graffitied the rock, but yeah, look at that. Right there, fingerprints.
About a 20-minute drive from Lehman and Baker is Snake Creek. For a nominal fee, you could spend the night here. Most campsites are primitive, but some have their own pit bathroom and fire pit. Don't be intimidated by this road. Two-wheel drive sedans can easily make it, but just take it easy. Do take in the sights of aspen trees and limestone cliffs around you, though. At the end of Snake Creek Road is the Johnson and Dead Lake trailhead that will connect you to Great Basin National Park's trail network. From here, it's a strenuous 2.8-mile uphill hike to Johnson Lake and its abandoned mining facilities. Like all other hikes in the park, it's always recommended to start out as early as possible. If you decide to take the left path, you'll reach Dead Lake, the southernmost and smallest of all the glacial tarns in the park. It's kind of hidden behind the trees, so you'll have to keep your eyes peeled for it. Depending on previous precipitation levels, there's a good chance that Dead Lake is dead.
So this is Dead Lake. Whoa. They call it dead for a reason, because there is no water in it. It is late September, so it is still the dry season out here, which means Dead Lake will not fill up until the spring. That looks like they have some like irrigation in it or something. Ooh. That's interesting. Ain't gonna hurt you. Just go, big guy. Don't worry.
At 10,070 elevation, a dilapidated wooden structure will appear before you. What you are seeing is the abandoned Johnson Mill and Mining Village. In the early 1900s, a man named Alfred Johnson, whom Johnson Lake is named after, and his associate Thomas Dearden filed a mining claim in the upper Snake Creek area. Unbeknownst to them, a rancher also claimed the land for himself, and as a result, a lawsuit ensued. Johnson and Dearden emerged victorious, and the mine began operation in 1909. The demand for tungsten, a rare earth mineral commonly used in the manufacture of machinery, drastically increased due to the outbreak of World War I. While this looks like an alpine mountain paradise, Life for the miners and their families who lived up here was a living hell due to its remoteness, unforgiving winters, and dangerous working conditions. By the late 1920s, the demand for tungsten decreased, and the mine ceased operation in 1935 after the cableway terminal was destroyed during a winter storm. Most of the buildings from the mining village remain intact, and in 1995 the site was added to the list of U.S. historic places. It is important to note, however, for your safety and the preservation of the past, do not enter any abandoned mine shaft or structure in the area. Just past the abandoned mining village, at 10,782 elevation, is Johnson Lake, the most remote of all the glacial tarns in the park. Unlike Dead Lake, Johnson Lake has water in it year-round. Many experienced backpackers often camp out here due to the flat surfaces around the lake. The trail continues up the mountain on the right and back down to Baker Lake on the other side. Don't make the mistake I made. Always start out early if you plan to venture out this direction. Almost 11 miles south of the visitor center, off of Highway 21, is the pull-off to another one of Great Basin's marvelous features, Lexington Arch. Getting there, however, isn't that easy. The road from the main highway to the Lexington Arch trailhead is 11 miles and is unpaved and rough, where a four-wheel drive is recommended. Though if you have a decent two-wheel drive truck or SUV, you should be fine if you're careful.
Sorry about the dirty windshield. There's a lot of bugs out here.
The road occasionally gets eroded or completely washed out by flash floods, so be sure to check in with the visitor center before you make your way down here. Always be aware of weather conditions, as this area can become extremely dangerous during and after rainstorms.
This road's a little bumpy, but nothing I can't handle. You might want to take a four-wheel drive out here. I don't think it's required, but definitely you want a good vehicle for this road. Alright, so this is the trailhead to get to Lexington Arch. Lexington Arch is about 2.7 miles that way. And you have to drive up this road to get there. One thing that I would for sure recommend you guys do before you head out here is always go to the visitor center and check with the rangers about the condition of this road. Don't just rely on the website or what the app says. If there's a big rainstorm that comes in, this road will often get flooded out. So, in fact, even on the sign back there, it said, be alert for flash floods. So, it took me, I remember last time I came out here, the road was washed out and I didn't know that. And, I had to wait a whole year to come out here to go to Lexington. So, always check with the rangers about the condition of the road. There's the arch.
After parking at the trailhead, you must walk through a flood wash, where eventually you'll find the trail itself. Then it's about 2 miles of uphill switchbacks, where if you're lucky, you might spot some wildlife along the way.
I think it's bigger than I thought. I think it's huge.
Unlike most other arches, Lexington is made of limestone, and to this day, geologists are still unsure as to how it formed. One theory suggests that it could have been a passageway in an ancient cave system, as sediments typically found in caves have been discovered in and around the base of the arch. Another theory speculates that it might be a natural bridge, created when Lexington Creek flowed through a cave that once existed in the mountainside. Whatever the case may be careful around the rocks and boulders if you decide to go closer. Like most other arches and ancient monoliths, the arch is slowly but surely being eroded by the elements. But as of now, it's in good shape and will likely be here for a few hundred more years, or perhaps longer. To the right of the Lehman Visitor Center is the Rhodes Cabin. Built in the early 1920s by a man named C.T. Rhodes, it once housed the caretakers of the cave. The cabin has since been designated as a historical landmark. Inside are exhibit panels where you can learn about the cave, as well as Absalom Lehman, whom the cave system is named after. Absalom Lehman was born on January 6, 1827, to a middle-class family in Pennsylvania. In 1849, his family moved out west to California, seeking mining opportunities, and saw some success. After living in Australia for a while and marrying his wife there, Absalom and his new family made their way to east-central Nevada, and by 1869, he owned a ranch just north of the park. How the cave was discovered is unknown, while Lehman is often credited for finding its natural entrance sometime around 1883 when he gave his first written record of it. There is evidence that Native Americans knew of the cave's existence for a long time. By 1885, he was regularly giving tours to curious adventure seekers. After his health took a turn for the worst, Lehman sold his ranch on September 1, 1891, and moved to Salt Lake, where he died just a little over a month later on October 11th, at the age of 64. The National Park Service offers ranger-guided tours of Lehman Caves. The tours range from 30 to 60 to 90 minutes and go to different areas of the cave system. The tours tend to sell out very quickly, so it's best to reserve one ahead of time before your visit.
Just under a year. I've worked in a couple other parks, but I was here last summer and did these 2-3 times a day through COVID, which was really fun. And now, hopefully, this should be way more relaxed and nice and easy going in today. Where there are still some important ground rules I just got to go over first before we go in, both for your safety.
Lehman Caves is the largest cave in Nevada, with around 2 miles of passageways. It is believed to be between 2.3 and 8 million years old, with the geologic processes that created it beginning around 500 million years ago. The main entrance is behind the visitor center, and a long artificial tunnel was constructed where the natural entrance once stood. The first room you will enter after the tunnel is the Gothic Room. Typical cave formations of stalactites and stalagmites are found everywhere, with some of the oldest being around 2 million years old. One very unique formation within Lehman Caves is the parachute shields. There's over 500 of them located in several rooms, and it's still not fully understood how they formed. Other rooms in the cave include the Lodge Room, which has pooling water on its floors, the Music Room, and of course, the Grand Palace. Another room of note is the Talus Room. It's around 300 feet long and 40 feet high, and is located further back from the Grand Palace on an alternate path. Prior to the 80s, this room was just another room in the cave, open to tours. However, in 1983, numerous ceiling collapses and rockfalls rendered it too dangerous for casual visitors, and it has since been closed off to the public, with only geologists and other professionals having access. The Talus Room has since reverted back to its natural state, and is slowly recovering after decades of human presence. Beyond that is another series of passageways called the Gypsum Annex, known for its white gypsum floors, walls, and ceilings. As of today, 15 new species have been discovered and found only within Lehman Caves, the most prominent of which is the Great Basin pseudoscorpion. Other species include the snake range millipede, springtails, and certain forms of bacteria. Over the years, the MPS has slightly altered the cave's main passageways to make it more navigable for normal people, which included building walkways and stairs when needed. It's also been equipped with a light system, allowing the paths to be illuminated for visitors. If you were unable to visit Lehman Caves during your time in the park, the MPS offers a 3D LiDAR-produced virtual tour on their YouTube channel. Highly recommend checking it out.
So, are there still unexplored parts of this place? Oh, okay. Yeah. When was the last one discovered?
I want to say that was the 90s.
Oh, wow.
It was back. So the Park Service didn't know it was there, but when they moved this boulder and found this passage, they actually found an inscription from someone who was here in the 1800s.
No way.
So we were not, we didn't know it was there, but somebody had gone back and discovered it.
In the northern portion of Great Basin National Park lays a vast area called Strawberry Creek. It has several different trails that go throughout the area, the largest of which is the Strawberry Trail, located at the end of Strawberry Creek Road. The other trail is the Osceola Ditch Trail, and it branches off from the Creek Trail heading south and eventually links up with Lehman Trail after about 7 miles. In 1877, gold was discovered in the area west of the Snake Range, and miners needed a source of water for operations. In the late 1880s and early 1890s, the Osceola Ditch was constructed primarily by Chinese laborers to funnel water from Stella Lake down to Osceola, a nearby mining town. The water flume operated from 1890 until 1901 and didn't see much success. Most of the physical remnants of the ditch are long gone, but what little is left is registered on the list of U.S. historic places, just like the Johnson Mining Village. Strawberry Creek is also a great spot for fishing and home to the local Bonneville cutthroat trout. However, catch and release is strongly encouraged by the MPS. In 2014, NPS archaeologist Eva Jensen was surveying the area when she discovered something peculiar leaning against a tree off-trail just behind one of Strawberry Creek's campgrounds. Upon closer examination, it was a late 19th century lever-action Winchester Model 1873. This famous gun is often referred to as the rifle that won the West due to it being a favorite of early settlers, cowboys, and lawmen of the Wild West. Thankfully, it was found just in time, as less than 2 years after its discovery, the Strawberry Creek wildfire of 2016 decimated the area. The fire destroyed Strawberry Creek, tragically claiming the life of a firefighter. 26-year-old Justin Randall Beebe. May this brave gentleman rest in peace. However, the area is slowly making a comeback, and it has since been reopened to the public for camping and hiking. The rifle was sent to the Buffalo Bill Center of the West in Cody, Wyoming for further examination, where it was taken to a local hospital and x-rayed, revealing a .44 Winchester round in the buttstock, as well as a jerry-rig repair using metal pins to fix parts of the rifle's wooden exterior. The round inside was manufactured sometime between 1887 and 1911, meaning that it was abandoned here around that time. Who this weapon belonged to and why it was left here is the newest mystery of the American West. But as of now, the rifle is on display at the Visitor Center in Baker, just outside the park entrance. Looming large over Great Basin National Park is the famous Wheeler Peak, the second tallest mountain in the state of Nevada, and the tallest here in the Snake Range. It's named after George Wheeler, a 19th century pioneer and cartographer who conducted his famous 1870 survey of the American West for the U.S. government. And there is indeed a trail to the summit. There are two trailheads for the trek up to Wheeler Peak. The first one is called Summit Trailhead, located off the right side of the road near the end of the Scenic Drive, and the other is at the Alpine Lakes. Both eventually link up, so it doesn't matter which one you start at. However, the Alpine Lakes area does have more parking.
I got a little bit left, but it don't matter. I don't need a lot. That's it. Empty. Check it out. All right, let's hit Wheeler Peak.
Summiting Wheeler Peak isn't easy, and you must start out early in the morning, otherwise it'll get dark on you quick. Make sure to bring extra water and snacks, as this will be an all-day thing. Good footwear is a must, and bring a hiking stick, as you might encounter snow and ice along the way. Only hike Wheeler Peak when the weather forecast is good, because rain, snow, high winds, and lightning can hit the mountain at any given time, often randomly without warning. Along the way, you might see herds of wild turkeys.
In 3.1 miles, the destination is on your right, Wheeler Peak.
Yeah, I know that theory.
Also, it can get really cold around here, so make sure you bring something to keep you warm. One thing to take note of as you hike upward is the change of scenery corresponding to the change of altitude. The higher you go, the fewer trees you'll see, and you'll transfer from the montane zone to the alpine zone. Once you reach the ridge, there are rock shelters. Use these to rest, or to shelter yourself from inclement weather if needed.
Halfway there. No, a little more than halfway.
You are also more likely to encounter high winds at this point. The closer you get to the summit, the more likely you'll encounter hardened snow and ice on the trail. If this is the case, proceed with extra caution. Oh, and if you look down, you could see Brown Lake.
much see all of Great Basin National Park from up here. You have Stella Lake, Theresa Lake, there's Brown Lake. If you look closely, you can see Baker Lake right there, and then on the other side of this mountain here, Johnson Lake is on the other side of that. So this is the second, oh, and that's Doso Dayabi Peak. This is the second tallest mountain in Nevada. It's the tallest in the Snake Range and the tallest in Great Basin National Park. And it is a heck of a hike to get up here, but if you could do it, it's worth it. Definitely worth it. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching my video about Great Basin National Park. Unfortunately, I wanted to record my final diatribe up at the summit, but my phone died and now it mysteriously turned back on. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit the like button. Please comment and subscribe. And you definitely should come out to Great Basin National Park, hike Wheeler Peak, do all this other cool stuff here. It's worth it. This is a nice park. Anyway, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Kevin out.